seem to forget. This is not a withering, shy person.
No.
Okay,
No.
this is not somebody who's dithering and just not sure what to do. Oh my goodness, but I just don't know. If he is questioning, he's thinking things through at a lot of levels. And to think that he somehow lost his mind, lost his nerve, got weak and feeble, and old age had suddenly descended upon him in this worrisome moment as he's about to leave the presidency because, he thought he'd win, but he didn't. Bull fucking shit. Give me a break.
He's sharp as a
Who
tack.
are you
Sharp.
listening to?
Yeah.
Come on. In that meeting, what you were seeing was one of the great grand masters of chess, one of the unbelievable poker players with a poker face, not giving away what he knew, what he had. You're in a game of Casino Royale. The unique thing about Casino Royale, only one person takes home the entire pot.
Right.
There's one winner. There's no second place. Okay? Same thing in chess. So there's no also ran position. And on that December 28th date, remember, you keep hearing all this stuff. January 6th, January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. He was trying to do this. He was trying to cause a revolution. He's trying to cause a civil war. He's doing all this stuff. He's got all those people. He's not going to leave office. And he's trying to destroy the country. Well, in the background, behind the scenes, you don't think we had good, solid intel that he was aware of? He was still president, getting daily briefs. In the
Right.
PDP, there's all this data that's there available to the president. And he's got his inner advisors at various levels. And what's the point? The point is, had President Trump signed the Insurrection Act, had he turned loose the dogs of war to go fight over the election outcome, there was enough question about exactly what had happened and how good the data was, how solid it was, how much you could prove, etc. Imagine had President Trump signed the Insurrection Act visibly, made a big stink of it, and in those few days before January 6th, if President Trump had begun that process, what would January 6th actually for real have looked like? Would you have had the first shots across the bow of a civil war in America? Almost certainly that's true. You had lots of people that were ready to take their guns and go do something. Instead, on January 6th, and remember, I was there. It's in the video, The Called, The Makings of a Perfect Day, that Jennifer Mack made. And that movie is fantastic. And if you haven't seen it, go see the movie.
We'll put a link down below.
It's a perfect day. Yes.
And
Our producer just said he's already got the link down below. If you're watching this live on Rumble, there is a link below there. You can be able to find that.
That's right. And so why is that relevant? Because the people that were there, I mean, there's 1 million people there. It's amazing how many people were there. And they were in prayer. They were singing. There was a gal there with a huge speaker system that's in the movie. And she was saying the Lord's Prayer. She was saying prayers over the whole crowd. That was the atmosphere that was there for the day. They weren't there for civil war. They were there to be counted, present and accounted for, ready for duty. And but they didn't show up to start a war.
No.
Some instigators, some infiltrators went and did stuff, and then they had willing accomplices with the way that the building was opened up there at Congress, inviting people in. And by the way, Putin was pointing out, you talk about our gulags. What about the gulags of D.C. with all these people that have been taken in related to that January 6th thing and how they're being held? It's crazy.
Treated horribly. They're treated worse than any criminal that there is. A lot of these are The first lady was sentenced recently, and I think it was, I don't know how old she was, but she was an elderly grandmother, and basically her whole crime on the sentencing was trespassing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, all it's like a big hullabaloo for nothing. For those of you, like, this gets reshared a lot. I'm going to put on here. Today is June 29th. He's with a manual deal because
like one of the biggest comments we always get is like, what day was this actually recorded on? You know, that's like the biggest thing people like what is most active, up to date?
Well, because these videos, we deal with Juan. Sometimes they're done in like Pakistani, weird words down below. You can tell it's not English, isn't their first language.
Everybody loves Juan, so it just keeps getting shared.
Reshared 4 months later or whatever. So June, I'll say June 29th, 2021.
Yes.
This is a manual way of documenting that. but you're exactly right in that Putin is correct in saying that. Putin has every right to say that because the way things are being run under this deep state regime is like the gulag.
Well, and again, so we go back to the incident on January 6th, how it was, they want to portray it in this very sinister thing. What if President Trump had done what was being very sternly requested of him by these people that were present there? And they're all patriots. They're all friends of the president. They went there in good faith. That cannot be in doubt. And the president in good faith listened extra long in case he'd missed something, in case he misunderstood something, in case there was any question. He gave them the extra time. I had one of my associates was waiting there in the building to do a meeting on something else critical, and had to wait till the next day because the meeting went so long. The president took so much time. And why wouldn't he do something with this good advice? Because on the numbers, he knew, based on the modeling, the AI modeling, reviewing the situation, where the country's at, where the people were at, that it was a formula that would lead to civil war, brother against brother here in the country. Everything, the opposition, the Soros teams, the BLM, the Antifa, everything they've been doing for well over a year has been aimed at beginning a civil war.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay.
Complete division.
So
Yep.
complete division.
But it's Marx's playbook. Marx's playbook, create division, like you said, brother against brother on every level.
That's exactly right.
Class,
Right.
color,
So
mass,
had the
facts.
president done what he'd done, we would have gone into civil war
Yep.
because the numbers were not sufficient to stop them. How do you keep from getting into civil war? You have to have a large enough consensus amongst the population that it's quite a ways away from 50-50. And on this stuff related to the election data, look how long it's taken just to get where we're at with Arizona, and we're still running into all sorts of opposition to get the release. We have external forensic data that we had literally the day after the election. I brought the guys in and we went through it. They ended up going to other places and doing stuff for other people, and their work has been seen in most of the stuff you see with the attorneys and the other groups that are doing it. But we had it literally that next day, forensically, externally, in ways that are classically admissible in court for auditing purposes, etc. But in this case, you really need the internal data. And the other stuff that was done through other intelligence agency systems and military systems, that's not necessarily accessible, refined, ready for prime time, even though it's there and was had. So the long and short of it is, you would have had a big Duke Mount fight that would have lasted a very long time, and over weeks and months. One incident would lead to another incident, would cause other people to get blown out of shape another way. I was having a conversation with a couple of very famous coaches the other day out of the Southeast. And one of them said, look, I was ready to go, grab the armory and go to war. I said, that's my point exactly. That we couldn't allow that to happen. President Trump, with the absolute best interests of his fellow Americans at heart, did exactly what he had to save the country by holding, to allow this data to develop in a way that the people could see it, that would be actionable, and allow the people to organically come of age mentally, wake up, engage, and decide to go after this. And so I come back to this early portion of our conversation. You have candidates coming out of the woodwork who are not, they don't have a history in the machine, in the system. They haven't paid their dues at the city council level, and then they're going to go to this, and then they know exactly how they're going to function for that. They have the skills, they have the qualifications, but just like President Trump, he jumped past all those lower positions, went straight to the presidency. No political history at all.
Man,
What
that is
was
so
his
true.
value?
Yeah.
He wasn't already cooked by the system. He hadn't made his bones where they could control him. They had him. Okay. And we have a lot of candidates for some of these offices that come from a similar perspective, that have all the qualifications, understanding to do this stuff, but they didn't come up through the machine. So they haven't been ground and pushed and molded like clay to fit the machines stuff. They aren't owned by the people that run the GOP in these various states, etc. And so they don't want these guys. They don't want anything to do with them.
Man, that's so true.
Colton's pulling up some candidates here for Secretary of State that are skipping some ranks. You're seeing some people come straight from, like, their intention is like, man, this was my life over here. Reluctantly, all right, I'm going to go this direction over here because I got to save America. They're like a JuanO'Savin. It's like all right, I'm going to stay off. I'll be back on the boat in 3 days. Well, it's a year. It's a year later because I'm willing to do whatever it takes, and they have tomatoes thrown at me and have them try and run my name in the mud, whatever it takes. But I've got to save this country.
Man, that is so true. We are seeing that. Yeah, whether it be, Heidi St. John in Washington, running for the House of Representatives, or you've got, people running for governor that's never had any kind of political background, either business, or Secretary of State. We've done so many interviews lately. Yeah, exactly.
They're not like some of these politicians, some of them have never even had a job, let alone ever owned a business.
Right.
They've never created anything. They've never had the weight of responsibility of going to bed at night thinking, how do I keep this thing afloat for the betterment of others, which is actually a form of service. They've never served.
Yeah. Well, and again, I come back to, are we being managed, even in the candidates that we get to choose, by the people that are supposedly on our side? We got some really great folks with real skill sets that are good choices. I am concerned that some of the people that are being offered up for endorsement by President Trump may not actually be the right choices as far as the people are concerned. A choice that was made to back for a governor of Texas. You talk to the folks locally there in Texas, and there's a lot of people I have a lot of respect for, and they're like, are you kidding me? Seriously? And that may need to be revisited, but some of these advisors may not be, they may be making strategic calculations that may not be the best at the end of the day for the people. And I think we, may need to revisit some of these things, and we'll get a chance to. That said, there is a brand there with President Trump that plenty of the candidates are still seeking his endorsement. And because he has so much weight in the country with the people, and also that's why people from both Russia and China are keeping doors open, back doors open of communication, because they haven't given up that President Trump is coming back, and they don't mean in 2024. They understand there's other stuff at play, and they want to keep those contacts open, those options open, because they see things turning much sooner than 2024. And let me just go on and attack that for a second.
That'd be great.
The mechanisms where you could go through the judicial or congressional mechanisms or machines and end up with President Trump being handed or moved into office and Biden being taken out for some reason related to the vote, they just don't really technically exist. There's people can make all sorts of arguments, etc., but let's just get to the politics for real. Congress is not going to reverse where they've certified the vote. Just isn't going to happen. The courts are vested. They denied standing to people to have a starting place to say something related to the vote. So you're not going to get the courts to back up, certainly not easily, and almost certainly just isn't going to happen. It would be just not possible from a political standpoint, just not going to happen. The administrative side, which is the executive, which is the presidency, and the Congress and the courts. You have a corrupt Congress and a crooked court. They're captured operations. They're doing somebody else's bidding, and they don't even want to hear, let alone see any evil. And the president's not going to say anything evil about it because he's the winner. So you got the fox guarding the hen house regarding the outcome of the vote. And you're going to go in and you're going to get some action from the states who couldn't even get standing for Texas with 30 some other states wanting to join in to challenge the way the vote was held in other states that could determine who gets to be in charge. And you couldn't get standing then. How are you going to get standing now? The reality is that just doesn't exist. It's, as I've said, the only option ever was a military option. And so the presidency is not the same as the commander-in-chief. The presidency is an administrative position, and it's the inferior position in a control command situation. The presidency administers over matters between the Congress and the courts for civilian affairs out across the country. But in a military situation where the military is required, policing is aimed at internal problems inside the country, and the administrative side is aimed at policing and courts and justice within the justice system, which, by the way, you can't get to justice in the justice system right now, apparently. But the army, the military, is against foreign aggressors, those that would steal our freedom, steal our possessions, threaten us from outside of our borders, and or if they've invaded from inside our borders. But the military, the commander-in-chief hat, is the superior position of the two. Which is more powerful, the president or the commander-in-chief?
I would say commander-in-chief.
That's right. Mao said all power emanates from the barrel of a gun. Well, who's got the bigger gun here?
Commander-in-chief.
Okay, commander-in-chief. Now, Biden's made some very bizarre comments over the last days and weeks.
Yes.
That are just, they're going to go nuclear on the American people. What's going on here? If you remember, Nancy Pelosi wanted to move control of the nuclear forces under congressional control a couple weeks after Biden was sworn in. The reality is that, and let me just clarify this for some of your listeners. I've mentioned it in the last few days, but it bears repeating again. The Director of National Intelligence gave 45 days, was given 45 days by an executive order signed September 12th, 2018 by President Trump. The executive order says that after every federal national election, the Director of National Intelligence, which is the 17th agency that supervises the other 16 intelligence gathering agencies like NSA, NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, FBI, CIA, all these other investigative agencies under Homeland Security, the Director of National Intelligence was required to provide a report to the President and to other agency heads concerning any evidence of foreign interference in a federal election. The foreign interference, the whole point is that if you have foreign countries, foreign powers, foreign could include corporations, globalist-minded groups or individuals who interfere in the election process in order to move the winner to be somebody favorable to them, not to the American people, the voters, but to move a person in who's suitable to their interests, to do their bidding. So foreign interference. That report was due from the 11/3 election date on December 18th, 45 days later. It never happened. It wasn't provided. Now, this is one of the things that was raised in this meeting with the president on December 28th, 10 days later, when all of these advisors came in and said, look, Director of National Intelligence is not in compliance with your executive order. And, the agency heads that are doing the investigation aren't providing the data timely. Why? What could possibly be the reason? Well, it was because they were getting data that was showing that there was foreign interference, and some of them are on somebody's payroll. They're under somebody else's, they're on somebody else's leash.
Was this under Radcliffe and what he was putting together at the end of 2020?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. And so you had no legal compliance with a legal order, and the nation's at stake. The future of the nation, who's going to run America, not just the presidency, but representatives and senators, etc. All these federal positions on the line, and there was nothing. You have time. You have over a month left to act if there is evidence of foreign interference, to try and determine what happened, who was behind it, what effect it had on the vote. That report never came. So when they were meeting with the president on December 28th, part of the context was, hey, somebody's not, giving us the data. Right. We're not able to protect ourselves as a people. If somebody's trying to capture the operation, we're not, they're not working with us. There's some kind of a problem here. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it, President Trump? And so he's looking at the data. He's also got information that's outside of the public conversation, that's outside of these people's direct knowledge.
Right.
This is on the other side of the firewall. Oh, we don't know anything about that. Yes, because it's on the other side of the firewall. Well, but he has to tell us, and he has to protect us. No, he doesn't.
Yeah, can't.
Okay, because some of that is so sensitive, so important, so critical, that we have to allow him room to keep certain things secret that we may have developed, known, figured out, that we're still working through, including that foreign activists, foreign powers, who not only participated in cooking the vote, were also trying to create a scenario where they would trigger civil war in America, including this January 6th event. Think about that. Okay? Anticipating anything Trump would do that might call the people to be aware of what's going on. And they turn around and then use that to run the country into civil war. President Trump did exactly what he was supposed to do. He didn't work in his own personal best interests to keep the president. Remember, his family is as much on the line as anybody on this planet. If he isn't back in, if we don't retake the Hill, they'll never back off going after his family.
Right.
Okay, you think that he was dithering and he was trying to be protective and he didn't know what to do? Are you kidding me? He's as much in the line of fire as anybody, period.
Right.
Look at what's going on in Southern District of New York with all the mischief down there, and they want to indict him. And by the way, they probably will. So what's going to be the result of that?
Counter move.
Judges oftentimes in a situation like that will put a gag order. So how much is he going to be able to speak to the American people with a gag order on him?
Which is probably their real goal. I mean, they have no intention of really binding him up legally. They really need his message, his briefings, his rallies to stop during this this time, because the scale's tipping towards that 81%.
Well, it is moving, and of course these rallies would move it further.
Yeah.
We have to be a bit, thicker skinned on this whole thing. There's plays going both directions. This is far from over. And understand, with as much at stake as there is, oh, I think we're close. We just got to do something right now. We're close enough. Well, close enough. Are you willing to gamble your whole country on it? When you're playing Casino Royale, you get hands that you think are pretty good, but you got to read your opponent. And maybe your opponent's got a pretty good hand too. Are you willing to take a chance with your children, your grandchildren's future on close?
And we got an opponent that is all in. We've had a conversation about the Wilshire Boulevard, 2018 military exercise, that took place. And, Pelosi and her crew was all vacated from the state of California at the time. Like, these guys are all in. And they're not playing, just bumper cars here.
This is not patty cakes. This is for all the marbles.
The opponent is all the chips in.
That's right. And this is for who controls the world. And most people are fixated on the presidency because that's where the media is at. That's our most common understanding of the role, most powerful position in the world, etc. But the reality is, it's not the presidency, it's the commander-in-chief. And so 45 days didn't get this report from the Director of National Intelligence. Then on January 19th, they get the report with only a day left. And the report, even then, is not complete. A lot of stuff that's not, fully finalized out, but they get a report to the president and the other agency heads with no time to act. It's a sealed deal. The courts have already decided that Biden's not going to be challenged. The states aren't going to be challenged on their vote counts, and Congress isn't going to do anything. That was the whole reason for showing up on January 6th, was that Pence could have pushed it back to the states for a recount and to look at the data, and Pence didn't do that. So, and by the way, there is no vice commander-in-chief.
he got a poor reception in Orlando 2 weekends ago.
Yeah. Well, and again, if you want to look at it in this way, look, if somebody goes after you on the vote, if it's an attack on your vote, be it digital or otherwise, that is the same as a WMD, a weapon of mass destruction, because you can decapitate the leadership and either make it so you can't have an elected person because the vote's so scrambled you can't put anybody in office, or you get somebody that isn't the person of the people. It's some adversary, somebody else's choice, who will do somebody else's bidding. So with that in mind, a stolen, fraudulent vote is the same as a weapon of mass destruction used against the people.
Right.
With that in mind, if it's WMD and you're under attack in a digital Pearl Harbor, a digital 9/11, then that means that you're in a wartime situation. The presidency is not the senior position. It's commander-in-chief. Now, the military, at the moment that they're required to hand over command of the nuclear forces, which is an upper strata of the military, the Joint Chiefs are advisory on the administrative side of government. The Secretary of Defense is advisory, administrative side of the government. Commander-in-Chief is a different role, and that's to control our nuclear forces and above. Cheyenne Mountain, control of our missile forces, Strategic Air Command, all the rest of it. That is a different strata of command, and the Commander-in-Chief controls that. And by the way, I have another appointment I have to get to fairly shortly, so I only have a couple moments left.
Good. Appreciate the time you got for us.
Background. Well, so with that in mind, and we got the gonging going.
You got the hunchback in the background swinging on his ropes.
I was actually going to ask you something, Juan. I just want to summarize it just to make sure that I get what you're saying. So all this counting that's going on in Arizona and then other states that are going to follow suit, this doesn't really have anything to do with the court system or, where it's going to go from there. It's actually the public people in the United States believing that there was shenanigans that happened. And once it gets to the point where over 80% believe that there was shenanigans, then the military can actually do something and civil war does not break out in our country. Is that correct?
Well, let me put it this way. And I apologize, I didn't expect the chimes here in
That's
the middle
okay.
of our conversation. The military can take action at any time, but it's what's appropriate for the moment. 45 days being the standard set in the executive order. At the moment when the military is required to hand over command and control of our nuclear forces, that's when they paused. And that's why Nancy was wanting to get the power put over to Congress. The military in that specific strata did not hand over command and control of nuclear forces to Joe Biden. They did not recognize him as the elected representative of the people because the data was not provided timely and was not responded to because there was no time to evaluate and respond to the data from the Director of National Intelligence. Using 45 days, they began their own investigation, not in a broad public military sense.
Okay.
Command and control of nuclear forces and beyond remained under the control of the generals. Remember, the suitcase, the briefcase, is only a handshake. It doesn't actually do anything. Biden can take his Toys R Us, colored plastic keys, that they got at the one-year-old sale and put them in the briefcase and do anything he wants, turn all the, nothing's happening.
Right.
Nothing's happening. A general has to agree with the other end. It's advisory. And the general has the ability, if he cannot get contact, let's say that some event happened and the president's unable to respond, the communication is broken, something's happened to the president, etc., and you can't get to the VP or whatever. The general, if missiles are in flight, if there's some active thing, he has the authority, the lawful authority to act, to protect the American people, to protect the infrastructure. Now, we've had some laws change that we would absorb a first strike. That happened back under Clinton, and then do a PDA and then determine how to respond. And that, in fact, is the case even here. We've been under attack. The drug stuff that you mentioned that happened at Long Beach Harbor, and then the radiological and the biological there on Wilshire Boulevard at the Guatemalan Cultural Center that we've talked about previously.
Yep.
All of those attacks, including these internal terrorist groups, Antifa and BLM, and similar, those are attacks on our sovereignty as a country. They are being brought against us by foreign-controlled individuals and groups, foreign managed. And so, with that in mind, holding to evaluate and not handing over control and retaining it at the general staff within the nuclear forces, a completely different strata than the general military and general staff, flag officers, etc. Within that specific strata, authority was not handed over to Joe Biden. 45 days being the pattern that was set up for the DNI report. If you go 45 days from January 20th, when the military is triggered, because they didn't do anything as long as right up to the moment that Biden was sworn, there were options for the courts and for Congress to act. They didn't. So the trigger was the moment when he was sworn, and then those authorities were intended to be handed over. If you use 45 days, that takes you out to March 6th. Mm-hmm. Then once the report is released to say, well, some action was instantaneous on that date, it could have been, but the reality is several days of review between the various authorities that do maintain control in a case of an attack. Just hypothesize, imagine that nuclear bombs have gone off across America and the world. Okay. And you have to assess what's still working, what could maybe be made to work, and what's not working and probably isn't going to be available as a resource anytime soon. That kind of an evaluation. How were we attacked? Who did the attack? Are we sure of who did the attack precisely, or is there some false flags involved? You know, was that pirate ship flying that flag actually from that country, or were they just doing that to make us think it came from that?
That's good.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so some evaluation is required of the data once completed because of the number of branches of services involved, each giving their version from their own military intelligence and their evaluation, and then an internal vote, 5 days. That brings you to 3/11. Now, I've said to your audience specifically and others, this whole period is an Esther moment. It's all about the reversal, the flip, or as Roseanne likes to say, the boomerang. And the reversal of the situation. 3/11 is the reversal of what?
November 3rd.
11/3.
Mm-hmm. Good job.
So, and then even then, once reading in a new commander-in-chief, the military does not put a president in office. Congress and the courts do that, the states with their vote. They recognize the lawful commander-in-chief. Once read in, the commander-in-chief then decides, as the controller of military options and forces, starting with the nuclear forces and beyond, what those next moves are. If you're not sure how the attack was done precisely or who's involved, maybe you need more data. Maybe you don't know what the ongoing attacks are moment to moment to moment. That's what you have to allow room to determine. And this doesn't have to be made public. In fact, it wouldn't be, because if you're under ongoing attack, the enemy knowing exactly what you can do or planning on doing in a military situation, are you kidding? A WMD of a digital attack, any type of attack to change the vote outcome, to decapitate or disrupt the lawful civilian control of our government, that's an act of war. Mm-hmm. So the response to prepare to respond to that is not something that maybe is known or knowable in just an instant. And you have to begin to work to reformulate and decide what's available to you for options. And that would be my contention. So part of the question is, by April 1st, did anyone who voted for Biden, or what was long before then just the Democratic candidate, were they made to look the fool. Do you look like a fool if you voted for Biden at this point in time?
Absolutely.
Should you be kind of okay? So did I lose my bet? And by the way, President Trump was never impeached.
Right.
They voted for impeachment, but he was never impeached.
Nope. Nor is
so
he conceded.
A president is president for life, for eternity, unless his rank is removed via impeachment. Senate never voted for impeachment. So just so you indict somebody doesn't mean that they were convicted. Okay? President Trump was never convicted and impeached by the Senate. So he's a president forever. So I said President Trump would still be president come April 1st, and anybody that voted for Biden would be the fool. Did I lose my bet?
Nope.
Okay, I did buy dinner for one of my friends that didn't want to buy it. But I have several others. I have several others that have said, "Oh, I think you might be right," and they're still holding.
Yeah. I wouldn't bet against you.
I wouldn't. No, you're talking fall now, right, Juan? Isn't that what you're thinking? Sometime late fall.
I'm not going to put a date because we're now in a military situation. We're under attack, but there's several more stanzas in this, play that have to be done. There's a few more scenes. They're not through attacking us on the financial. Financial things usually happen in the fall. And there's a lot of angles there. We have an incredible heat wave going on in America, in the western U.S., and that affects weather patterns. At the same time, we have weather patterns coming out of Africa where the hurricanes come from up in the south and east that are shaping up to be world class for some incredible hurricane season coming. America's headed for a very fiery next several months, probably the largest forest fire danger. And by the way, enemies have attacked us by lighting fires during this drought stuff. We're in a drought in the West with fire season. And then we have a huge hurricane season. We're going to have a tough second half of the summer and fall. And then some financial stuff. There's a lot in play. And by the way, I don't think Trump and his people have any desire to own the financial crisis that these people are setting us up for.
No kidding.
So, they want to have their way and people want to do it. Well, let's see what it looks like when they do what they're doing. Are we supposed to stop their mischief on the financial stuff? Is that the duty of the commander-in-chief? You have to sometimes make choices on what to do and when to do it. Even though the enemy gets to move up, gain some ground here or there, are you moving them into a location where you can then take them out completely? Do you have to yield ground, let them come in so you can encircle them? You can run them up a canyon. What's going on? I'm not going to second guess what's in play here. I am telling you that what the media is portraying about where we're at and what's at stake and how it's going to be played, I think there's you'd be on very solid ground questioning anything that the general media is allowing to be said, that any of the social media is allowing you to talk about or say. And reality in their world is different than reality in our world, but theirs is a concocted, twisted, fabricated reality. I was just looking at some of the numbers with one of the advisors near the president. Talked to him on a weekly basis, and they were saying that the social media data shows that the public isn't looking for a return of President Trump. They're looking for, election integrity in 2022 and 2024. And I said, are you kidding me? You're going to the social media that won't allow an honest conversation.
Oh, you can't even post, you can't
and
even
then
say
you're
anything.
doing your data based on what you see there.
That's a joke.
That's not what people want.
That is not true.
No.
You look at the energy behind things right now. We were just in Tampa at that event with Flynn and all those guys, and there's 10,000 people in the room and millions of people streaming online, and this is 6 months into a new regime or whatever. like when in history have people been this ramped up, this cranked up? It's like the Jack in the Box is just ripping. You know, the Trump, you know, President Trump, you know, event in Ohio. You know, they should have an event at the same location next weekend with Joe Biden and see who shows up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and compare the two shots. It's ridiculous.
It's a joke.
And it feels a little bit like all the apparatuses of media and our own government are not pointed at other nations. All the apparatuses of government are pointed at our own citizens right now.
Well, hold on. Let me just add one thing. And I've said this for years and years and years and years. The media operations are being controlled, being created by black hats inside of these federal agencies. Yeah. Remember, Facebook, the system that we call Facebook today was created over at DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Program. And so they created this thing, and then they anointed Zuckerberg to run that. You know, his wife is...
Is that deep state there grabbing a hold of him?
Yeah.